It's all good stuff. If someone says to you, do you want to do a play? I always say this to people who are younger actors. I say to them, they say, well, you know, what should I do? I say, get into a show. Get into a production. When I was at Strasberg, Strasberg basically brought you there. And this was their technique. I'm not mocking this. This was their whole thing. Their basic attitude was, you know nothing. And they were like, you know nothing! You know? And we are going to strip you of all of your hang-ups and all of the sediments that are piled on. We are going to give your soul a colonic and get all the crap out of there. And we're going to fix your head, man. And we're going to give you this psychic, ethical, chiropractic adjustment. And we're going to do all this stuff to you. And then maybe in the 4th year, we'll let you carry a spear in Midsummer Night's Dream. You know? Maybe in the 4th year, you can, you know, be a slave in a production. And it was not production-oriented. It just wasn't. I remember being in the NYU acting program, and you would look at people, and they would say, I'd say, how's it over there at Circle in the Square? What are you doing? They're like, I'm doing a production of The Importance of Being Earnest. No, year 1, they were like, well, you know, I'm over at Circle in the Square, and I'm doing Tartuffe. It was like, it was the opposite. They were very, very production-oriented there. And it was just, it was incredible. But I remember saying to myself, acting school is acting school, and it has its purposes, and it's separate and distinct. And then I would say to people, you know, when you feel ready, go do some shows. Doesn't matter where the show is.
Stanislavski once said that the talent is in the choice. And this is something that every acting student is eventually obliged to learn. Because if you're encouraged to make choices, the choices will reveal your talent. And Alec has had an eclectic career, to say the least. He's been very courageous. And one of the things that he's famous for is doing exactly what he's been talking about, taking supporting roles in motion pictures when he is a major motion picture star, but doing it for the reasons that he's already described to you. I won't ask him to repeat himself, but if you would, just a word about some of these films as a sentence, if anything occurs to you. If not, I'll push on. Working Girl.
I wanted to work with Mike Nichols. That was kind of a, you grow up and you know, there are a few directors who have the impact that Nichols has, and just to be around him, the 2 weeks I was around him to shoot the scenes was, it was one of those rare situations where I would have paid them to let me be in the movie.
Talk radio?
Stone, because Stone wasn't someone who had the same feeling for him as I did as Nichols, but Stone, his acting, I was described to me from others who knew him that acting in a Stone movie and working with Stone was comparable to what I guess what they call now in nightclubs a mosh pit. The mosh pit is at the stage, the front of the stage, where in punk rock bands they all jump off the stage into the pit and everybody beats everybody else up and everything. It's where everybody just, I guess, vents all this like really, you know, just hateful, dreadful rage on each other at a rock concert, you know. It's called the mosh pit. And someone told me that acting with Stone was like jumping into the mosh pit. And it was, actually. Making talk radio was very ugly.
What about a word or two about Married to the Mob, where you had, I think, the most difficult assignment an actor can have, which is to be unfaithful to Michelle Pfeiffer?
Yeah. I went and I auditioned for Matthew Modine's role. I think they kind of bait and switched me. So I could see he had that kind of glaze in my eye, in his eye. Jonathan Demme was kind of, and the whole time I was auditioning for Matthew's role, he was kind of looking at me, and I could tell he wasn't really paying any attention to what I was doing. He was kind of getting that over with, and he went, listen, while you're here, would you mind reading for the other part? And I read for the other part, and I wound up having a ball doing it, because that was really kind of a, there's a style. I mean, there's some movies you can get away with where you can do this really kind of hammy nonsense, you know. I mean, if you come from New York, for example, everybody, I think, wants to, you know, at least to do one movie, you know, where you're like, hey, what are you doing? Wait. And that was my chance to do that.
And in Great Balls of Fire, you made a very interesting choice. You played a young Jimmy Swaggart who seemed to mean every word he said.
You often have, civilian people in the world don't really know this about acting in films, and that is a lot of times, intentionally or unintentionally, you get shanghaied in movies. People meet you and they describe to you the movie that's going to be made, and to me it's always like a tour. And it's like someone's holding out a brochure to you and saying, what do you think? We're going to go to Fiji. We're going to get on a boat, and we're going to go to Fiji. Why don't you come on with us on the boat to Fiji? And you go, wow, man, that sounds really good. I'd like to do that. And you get out in the water about 3 days, and you go, this doesn't look like Fiji to me. And they'll say to you, I mean, nowadays they just say it to you. They're right out front. They'll go, and their tone changes dramatically. They go, we're not going to Fiji anymore. They say, we can't afford to go to Fiji. Got a change of plans. We're going to Staten Island. The thing with Great Balls of Fire, though, was it wasn't one of those things where it was deliberate. But the reason I did that movie was because it was very beautiful to me. It was that Lewis, Jerry Lee Lewis, the truth of his character was that he was this wild, rebellious, out-of-control guy who there was one man in his life, by virtue of one idea, who had a rope around him. He was like a wild animal. And there was only one guy who really had an impact on him, and that was his cousin, Sweat.